The shores of Cardano might soon be awash with immigrants from other blockchains, but it's important for us to remember that they didn't flee their former homes for no reason. They left because of broken promises. They were enticed by revolutionary technology that would disintermediate the middlemen and the banks. What they got was an endless stream of well dressed Ponzis and projects that one notable veteran DeFi developer has characterized as seemingly sophisticated financial protocols, but typically just shell games. Now it's our turn to try to do something better in Cardano. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss the Joseph DeLong thread on why a lot of DeFi may not be what it seems, an interesting admission from one of our competitors, Charles in DC, once again, some more information out of Indigo, and a second Cornucopias NFT tree sell. If you'd like to avoid interactions with other beachgoers by pretending to busily stockpile shells on a piece of driftwood, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. In just a second, we're going to talk about this thread, and credit to DC of Liquid for pointing this out, because I think this thread contains some truths about DeFi that a lot of its users may not fully appreciate. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the author. This is Joseph DeLong, former CTO of SushiSwap and former Ethereum core dev at Consensus working for Joe Lubin. How he got there, though, is the interesting part, and that's something he explains in this thread right here. He says, the year is 2002. My first working year produced $10,000 in W-2 income for a two-person household. My rent is $650 per month, and I drive 1 hour every day to work. My job is land surveying in Houston, where the humidity is bad and the mosquitoes are worse. I'm losing weight because I can't afford to eat. My pants are getting loose, and I can't afford a belt. Keeping my pants up by tying a plastic Walmart bag between two belt loops. Things are looking pretty grim for 2002 Joseph DeLong. He says his work ethic is bad. He's essentially starving to death. My bank account is always overdrafted. I can't afford anything. If I do, I deal mostly in cash because it can't be stolen by the bank cartel. I'm essentially fired from every job until 2004 when I joined the military. I convinced myself it's because of patriotic reasons. And remember, this is Joseph DeLong talking, not me. So if you're a veteran, don't be offended at me. This is me reading somebody else's words. But in hindsight, it is the able-bodied male version of turning tricks. Every poor able-bodied male joins the military at some point. Then he gets into his political feelings on the war. He says, during my time in the military, I started to follow real libertarian movements, campaign for Ron Paul, learn about the gold standard. I leave the military with no marketable skills at the peak of the housing crisis. Upon leaving the military, he's making slave wages delivering pizza in a manual 99 Honda Civic back in Texas, no air conditioning. He says he loved the job because it was about self-motivation and character. He was getting a degree in mathematics and computer science at this university. What is this? McMurray University. While I'm doing that, I learned about Bitcoin around 2012 and start mining it on my university library computers. Sorry, guys. He says, after graduation, I go to work for USAA, which, if you don't know, that is a bank that caters to people who are or were formerly in the military. But they're really active in blockchain. I start pouring time into Dogecoin, and bam, I meet Hudson Jameson. He tells me about Ethereum, and I brush it off. I start working in the USAA blockchain lab. I learn a lot of uncomfortable secrets about banking. Meet my epic bromance, Johnny Ria. We build a Web3 prototype for decentralized computation. Show it to Joe Lubin. He hates it, but he likes us. He hires us to build the ETH2 client. He says, we build it and launch the beacon chain. I love how he so casually, in just a handful of words, lays out how they built the ETH2 client, then they built the beacon chain, It's a huge accomplishments in the crypto world, and he lays it out in like, it's like less than a dozen words. He says, I did lots of stuff in between, and 0x Maki asked me if I wanted to roll at sushi. I accept, and the rest is history. So this is a guy who saw the traditional banking industry from the inside, saw some things that were pretty uncomfortable. Then he goes to work in the blockchain world, and he builds out some really important infrastructure in Ethereum at consensus, including the beacon chain, which is the current proof of stake version of Ethereum. After the merge, the main chain and the beacon chain will become one, and all of Ethereum will be proof of stake. Right now, the beacon chain is proof of stake. He did all this, and he was the CTO at SushiSwap. This is a person who probably knows a thing or two about DeFi. So we've established this guy probably knows some things about DeFi. Here's what he has to say about it, and I think it's probably pretty important, especially this first point. Fundamental design principles for DeFi. If the protocol doesn't work without a reward token, it's a Ponzi scheme. Let me say that one more time. If the protocol doesn't work without a reward token, it's a Ponzi scheme. If you, as the user, wouldn't be doing what you're doing inside the protocol if you weren't being given a reward token for it, it may be a Ponzi scheme. Think about that for a second. There are definitely protocols out there where the only reason you're doing what you're doing is because you're getting some kind of reward token. He says a reward token should not be necessary for a protocol to function. That means the protocol is not a revenue generating business. In a real protocol that's actually producing revenue, there should be some other coin coming into the protocol producing some kind of profit. It should be operating as a profitable business, or at least turning a revenue. Maybe it's a startup protocol and it's not even turning a profit yet, but it's working towards that once it reaches a certain scale or something. But if there's no other coin coming into the protocol, maybe it's a Ponzi scheme. We can imagine a hypothetical Cardano protocol here, some kind of Cardano DeFi protocol here. If the protocol is providing something to users and they're willing to pay ADA for it, and there's somebody supplying the liquidity for that thing in the protocol, and they're getting a share of that ADA that's coming to the protocol, that's starting to sound more like a revenue generating business. But if all of the customers in the protocol are just receiving a reward token of the protocol, and especially if there's no limit on how much of that reward token the protocol can print, then it's starting to sound more like a Ponzi scheme. This is a fundamental distinction that I think a lot of DeFi users, both in the EVM world and the Cardano world, don't really think about. It's funny because so much of the crypto rhetoric in the early days was centered on there only being 21 million Bitcoin. But in the DeFi world, people sort of look at the price of the reward token, and they may casually note whether or not there's any kind of hard cap on that reward token. But they'll pretty much just do whatever the protocol wants them to do if they keep getting more reward token. But nobody really looks at the overall protocol and asks the question, is this thing actually turning any kind of revenue? Or are they just printing reward tokens and paying everybody to do the various things in the protocol for the reward token? If that latter thing is the case, what Joseph is saying here is that maybe what you have to look forward to there is the price of that reward token collapsing one day. And if that happens, nobody's going to use the protocol because it was just a Ponzi scheme all along, dressed up like a sophisticated financial product. He says reward tokens can be really useful for bootstrapping necessary liquidity to achieve flywheel effects, encouraging early users to test the platform, or distributing some ownership in the platform to your user base. However, reward tokens are habit forming. If the emissions continue into perpetuity, the speculative value of the token is lost and it becomes the equivalent of paying users to use the platform. If the protocol is not making equivalent revenue to cover emissions, this is a Ponzi. There you go. That's a good definition. If the protocol is not making revenue equivalent to the emissions of the reward token, this is a Ponzi. So the protocol has to be making some kind of revenue, and I would contend that you're normally going to see that in, some other coin if the revenue is, if the revenue is coming into the protocol as as the reward token that someone had to buy somewhere else on some other exchange. Maybe you could argue that's similar to another coin coming into the protocol or something like that. But eventually, there needs to be some other asset coming into the protocol, because if the protocol is just printing as much of the reward token as they want and everything is happening in the reward token, the price of the reward token collapses. There you go. There's no value there. He says there are groups of mechanized token farmers out there farming and dumping tokens. Mercenary capital is not sticky. We know this. You can only emit once. Once a token has been emitted, you don't have the chance to do it again. Make sure you are emitting to encourage a specific behavior that is necessary. Token mechanics should be deliberate. This is another topic. He says, if staking or other mechanics are difficult to understand, it is likely the designer wants you as exit liquidity. Cough, V tokens, cough. This is also important to understand. Sometimes users encounter a DeFi protocol and they're like, this is so complicated. I must be so stupid. The person who designed this must be getting like a Nobel Prize for this very sophisticated financial product they've created here. This is so complicated. Maybe the reason it's so complicated is that the designer of the protocol wants to use you as their exit liquidity, because they're grinding themselves a bunch of coins for a bunch of tokens to create the protocol. They've got some portion of the protocol, whether it's 20% or 25%, whatever it is. And at some point, they would like to cash that out. In order to cash out those tokens, they need for someone to provide the exit liquidity. They want to turn those tokens into some other asset at some point down the road. They need someone to provide that other asset. That's the exit liquidity. And sometimes when the protocol seems extremely difficult to understand, it's not because the designer of the protocol is going to get a Nobel Prize for their extremely complicated design. Sometimes it's because it's complicated because they don't want you to understand that the reason they're having you lock up all those tokens and make it hard for you to exit at the same time they're exiting is because they want you to be providing the liquidity for them to exit. This seems Machiavellian, and people don't want to assume this motive in the designer of their favorite protocol. But I think in a lot of cases, when you ask yourself, why would they add those extra 3 intermediate steps in there? Why do you have to exit from this category of being locked up to this category of being locked up to this category of being locked up? And there are like these little periods you have to be in each of those categories. Why would it take so long? It's because as they exit their 20% stake in the protocol, the price is going to be dropping, and they want to be able to get out of there before you can get out of there. That's obviously the worst case scenario, but in more normal scenarios, they want to create all these little categories of being locked up. Now you've got this coin, now you've got this coin. And the reason you want this coin is because it provides this shield, and this other coin provides this shield. They want you to be all mired down in these different categories of different coins and different yields, so that while they're slowly exiting, you're all locked up in these different categories in the protocol. That's the good scenario for the designer, that they can slowly exit, very stealthily exit, slowly over time, and the users don't even notice. Obviously, they don't want the case where everybody's trying to exit as quickly as possible. Joseph says, deliberate token mechanics make logical sense, and share revenue with the token holders, or at least have that as a future option. Cough, uni, cough. Low interactivity is something he also sees as a good design principle for DeFi. Protocols that require multi-round games with multiple user types tend to fail. I think this is true as well. He says an example of a low interactive platform is Yearn. User deposits into Vault and the game is complete. Or Compound. User deposits into Compound. User borrows from Compound. Simple games where as few actors as necessary to accomplish the financial goal. Simple rules along with reduced interactivity. The rules of the game should be simple, relying on users to understand complex rules to participate in the system as a non-starter. MakerDAO is an excellent example of simple rules for each actor. Borrowers have to keep a collateral ratio or get liquidated. plus a liquidation fee. Liquidators bid on the vaults with DAI. I also think this is important, both for usability. The users need to be able to understand the protocol in order to want to use it, and also so that people can't find loopholes to exploit your system. I think these are all important points, but I think the most important point is the first one he makes. This telltale sign of the difference between a Ponzi scheme and an actual revenue generating protocol. And I think people don't really pay enough attention to this in DeFi. And this is a lot of the reason that we're going to be seeing these immigrants from other blockchains coming to Cardano, because this is what they've experienced a lot of on other blockchains. Notably, almost at the protocol level with the recent gigantic collapse. But even in smaller DeFi protocol projects, people have just seen things that tended towards Ponzinomics over and over and over again. It wasn't this libertarian crypto ethos thing where we try to create a new economic system to disintermediate the banks and the middlemen. I mean, that's what we really all signed up for. And what we got were a bunch of very well-dressed financial products, a lot of which kind of tended towards Ponzi schemes. They tended towards Ponzinomics. In Cardano, we've got to do better. So it's up to us as a community to look at these projects and ask ourselves, is this thing generating revenue? Is this thing actually making money? Or is everyone in the protocol doing what they're doing because they want to earn this reward token? If it's the latter thing, and especially if there's no hard cap on the reward token, but maybe sometimes even if there is a hard cap on the reward token, I'm sure somebody can dream up schemes where there's a hard capped reward token, but the protocol doesn't actually generate revenue, and everybody's doing everything to earn this reward token, which they hope goes up in value just because it's hard capped, but the protocol is not actually generating any kind of revenue. But we've really got to take a hard look at these DeFi protocols and ask, is this thing a revenue generating business? Or is this just a bunch of people trading this reward token back and forth and doing everything they're doing in the name of earning this reward token? It looks like Charles is in DC this week at the DC Blockchain Summit 2022. He says he's attempting to engage with regulators and think tanks to see how we can move forward as an industry. We certainly need to do more of this as an industry. I think we need to heavily engage with the regulators and lawmakers, policymakers. Basically, we need to do a ton of lobbying. I think the crypto industry has started to do this. Charles has talked about how much money he has sort of donated to crypto lobbying in DC. But I think we need to do a whole lot more of this, since that seems to be the only way to actually get things done in DC. Maybe one of the most consequential things to come out of this DC blockchain summit is that Senators Lummis, I believe she actually has two M's in her name, Senators Lummis and Gillibrand revealed that their comprehensive crypto bill that we've talked about previously on this channel is looking like it's going to drop next month. So we can see that next month. So Lummis and Gillibrand are definitely allies of ours. They're allies of the crypto space. Lummis in particular is from Wyoming. She's a Wyoming senator, and she spends a lot of time talking about crypto, and it seems like she's really on our side. So I have high hopes for this comprehensive bill. Can it get a foothold in the Senate? Can it make any progress? Who knows? But at least we've got somebody out there trying. In other news, one of the developers of Polkadot, who is not Gavin Wood, tried to address the widely reported bit of information that Polkadot's consensus mechanism is based on Ouroboros, which of course is the consensus mechanism of Cardano. We've known about this for a long time. This has been news that's been in circulation for a long, long time. The consensus mechanism in Polkadot is based on Cardano's consensus mechanism. So we finally tried to sort of address and brush this under the rug, diminish the importance of this. So he says, Babe is based on Ouroboros, but it only took about 2 weeks to code. And then he goes on to talk about how much longer other parts of Polkadot took to code. He says, thanks for the paper anyway. I had fun coding it. As if that would do the trick. Everyone would say, oh, he only took 2 weeks to code it, so it's not that important a piece of Polkadot. But of course, this is blockchain, and people know consensus is a critical component in any blockchain. So we have our very own ADOL down here pointing out, so the Polkadot consensus protocol was coded up in 2 weeks. Okay, noted. That led later on for the original poster to put this up. Keep scrolling to read comments by people who don't know what Ouroboros is beyond something vaguely related to their bags. Unfortunately for him, he doesn't know that the Cardano community is pretty keenly aware of how consensus works, because our consensus protocol is so different from everything else in crypto except for Polkadot. This meme right here probably puts even a finer point on it. Finally, Cornucopia's second NFT test drop to test out their homegrown minting technology will be going down today at 4 p.m. This will also be an NFT to tree sell. This time they will be fruit trees. Cornucopias lets us know, where is it? Let's see. You as a holder can plant your digital tree in Cornucopia's metaverse to receive special airdrops in the game. This will be going down today at 4 p.m. I hope everybody is having a great week, and I will talk to you tomorrow.